over the world. If you are listening to this, it is your responsibility to burn this for every single motherfucker you know.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Movie Boners.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, that's the good stuff. What beer are you drinking today?
Dude, I could not find anything that would be relevant, at least at the liquor store I went to. So I saw this, was like, hey, that's easy going. That's something I haven't tried. I've had other beers by this brewery, but I'm trying Moore Field Blonde Ale.
Okay.
Yeah, from 5x5 Brewing in Mission, Texas.
Mediocre?
Okay. It ain't bad. It's just...
Does the job.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm in a similar boat. I couldn't really find anything relevant, so I just had to get a beer that my wife would like, so I got this one. I got from Odell Brewing Company a classic, the Rupture Fresh Grind IPA, and it is very, very good.
Nice.
So there.
Nice.
All
Odell makes good beer.
They
make good beer.
They do. Yeah, they're solid folks. So, as you may probably know, because you watched, I'm sure, all of last week's episode and didn't get tired by the end like we did, we drafted our 2023 movies. I, of course, am the reigning, defending champion of last season, and you are not. So let's check in. Let's check in with where we're at this season.
You know, we're 1 week in, and I'm already mad.
That's all it took, huh?
Well, I guess we're not 1 week in, but we're like,
yeah.
Audiences.
We're recording it on the 13th. We're recording on the 13th. So Plane and A Man Called Otto came out today. Megan came out last week. You famously said Megan will be the worst movie of the year. It is currently $56 million and a 6.7 on IMDb. And audiences like it. Critics like it more than audiences. 16% more. So I am actually in the red right there. So that's not great. But you can blame critics, I guess, is the main thing. Critics like it more.
I don't get it. When I saw one that it opened second in the box office, I was like, what?
To be fair, there wasn't much competition. It was Avatar.
True. So I'll give it that. Like, but even then, I was like, what? And then I'm on IMDb, just mindlessly perusing, as I do sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, I saw the rating at 6.7, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
yeah.
What is happening? And then I guess I'm learning a lesson in eating my words or something.
Yeah.
Because end of last year going into this one, like just a couple weeks before the end of the year, one of my coworkers and I were talking, and I told him, like, dude, I'm done trying to figure out how audiences are going to react or what studios are doing with their movies. I'm so done trying to figure this out, because back in the day, it used to be easier to figure out. Now it's just a free-for-all. Who knows? Just, it's frustrating.
It's a feeding frenzy.
Right. And what do? Right out of the gate, I make a prediction. Like, Megan might be the worst movie made of the year.
I like how you say might now. I don't think you said might last week.
Son of a bitch. All right, I
You're
claimed it
very
would be the worst
confident.
movie of the year, and all of
You're
a sudden,
so confident you chose 80 for Brady
I did.
next, thinking you were safe.
Okay,
Like you were
hold up.
golden.
Hold up. There was no confidence in either of those picks. It was our last pick of the night. It was late.
Yeah.
I was tired.
Mm-hmm.
We had just picked 34 movies between the two of them, like each.
Yeah.
And I make
desperate.
a stupid comment of Megan being the worst movie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And people seem to love it and are doing the whole, like, I'm scrolling Facebook earlier, and there's already a dancing trend between Megan and Wednesday and emo Peter Parker, and my brain is like, this world makes me sad sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't know if it's a meme or what it is, but yeah, people don't hate it.
it's weird. I don't get it. Because I guarantee, like, a great movie is going to come out later this year that everyone's going to be like, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually going to be good.
Yeah.
And then what really makes me mad, Jake, what really gets to me
Okay.
is I kind of want to figure out why people like Megan so much, and now I'm in a boat debating, am I going to go watch that fucking movie? And that just upsets me.
Well, I mean, considering that you saw Avatar,
I know.
I think you'll be okay.
I know. But I'm like, sometimes being the kind of movie fan that I am
Mm-hmm.
can be a real pain in the ass. And that's where I'm at the start of 2023.
Okay, so it's going well.
I'm just like, God damn it.
Plane came out today. It's also doing pretty well, and A Man Called Otto is doing pretty well as well. So you are winning, if that helps raise your spirits at all.
Ooh.
You are in the lead. You are winning in the average rating, just barely, and you're winning in the Rotten Tomatoes difference between audiences and critics.
Mm-hmm.
I threw in a whatever you call this in the chart what our last year's metrics were, just so we can kind of see how we compare this year to last year.
Okay.
And we are much closer already than we were at the beginning of last year. So I don't know what that's going to do for us, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
The box office chart, I had to zoom way in on it because we shot up pretty darn quick. But you were in the lead at the beginning. Now I'm in the lead in the box office. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. It's very
Megan.
exciting. You should go see it. I was going to save this for, I guess, the next segment so we can talk about it now. New things we've seen.
Oh.
I saw Megan.
Oh my God, you went and watched Megan?
I didn't go and watch it.
Oh.
So before we get into it, this is a safe place, right? This is a safe space.
We're only putting this on the internet, which is
anything that we say on this show, we're joking about. I pirated Megan. And so I haven't left the house in a year to go to the movie theater because I have a newborn baby. He's not newborn now. He's walking around. He's an animal. But I was like, I need to, for this episode, because we're talking all about copyright and protection and intellectual property. I was like, I should, for research, stream a movie on the internet that is only in theaters. Some would call it pirating. And so I was like, well, I thought about doing it for Avatar. And then I was like, but then I would have to watch Avatar. So I'm not going to do that. And so Megan was the next obvious choice. So I did watch it. It's not that bad. It's not great, but it's a fun time. It's not scary, but there's some pretty fun jokes in it. I thought the story was interesting. It does an interesting thing where, what's her name? The girl from Girls, she has to like raise this girl that is her niece, I think.
Okay.
And she ends up kind of obviously regretting not being the caretaker and letting this AI doll be the caretaker that she kind of latches onto emotionally. So it had some heart and seriousness to it. I thought it was not bad at all. I think 6.7 is high, but it wasn't bad. You got nothing, huh?
I got nothing.
All right, that's fine.
Of course you saw it. You were, you know what you were probably really thinking? You know what you were thinking?
Tell me what I was thinking.
You were probably like, wow, Megan opened pretty well. And Dustin talked a whole bunch of shit about Megan.
Mm-hmm.
And I won the draft last year. So anything to rub any kind of like failure into Dustin's face, I'm going to do it. I bet you watch Megan at a spite just to be like, ha ha, fucker.
I did, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah,
dick. Dick.
The other new thing I watched recently, I watched a documentary that came out this last year called Jurassic Punk.
Okay.
And it's about this guy. I don't know his name. It's mostly about him, but not entirely about him. And he was like the main animator on Jurassic Park that came up with all of these revolutionary digital effects for Jurassic Park. It's a really interesting and really good documentary. I liked it mostly for the movie making and business side of and just the history of they did this thing and it was incredible and it was great, and Jurassic Park is a perfect movie. But they also go into some of the unintended consequences of that, which are creating every movie after that was like digital effects is the future. It's the way, and it is the future in the way, but they pushed it so hard so fast in the early 2000s that some of it looks terrible. A lot of it looks terrible.
We are in 2023, and even some of the CGI and like Avatar looked real shoddy.
Yeah, so there's certainly limitations to it, but I thought it was very interesting. And this guy is it's called Jurassic Punk because he was very much not wanting to like play the main like corporate game with ILM and Disney and all these people, and James Cameron, and he talks about The Abyss and Terminator 2 that he worked on and all that stuff. And so it's interesting, but he's also kind of like learns to regret it in certain ways. Just it's an interesting character thing, but mostly I was interested in just the effects and the history of it. So it's really good if you're into that kind of like documentary stuff. I would recommend it.
Nice. I'll have to look.
What about you? Anything new you've seen?
Dude, I haven't watched anything new. How freaking weird is that? Roles reversed.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah.
Well, you watched enough last time for.
I felt like. I think. Yeah, but don't worry, because I've got the weekend coming up. I got shit to do. I'm probably gonna watch a couple new ones.
Well, good. That's good. I watched some new trailers this week.
I watched a couple trailers.
I'm really excited about that Beau is Afraid trailer.
Okay.
Let's go back to it. Let's talk about
let's just bring this up real quick, all right?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna beat you to the punch and give myself shit.
Okay.
We record our draft episode. We recapped. We drafted. You were like, you know what?
Crowned me the winner. That happened also.
That's, it's. We don't need. That's not
that. It's right there.
I deserve it.
Sorry, you were saying.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. So you pick Beau is Afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave you shit for it because it was like, dude, this movie is in limbo. Like, you picked
I picked it last year when it was called a different name and it never came out.
Like the whole thing, just nothing's happening with this movie. And you were like, I'm really excited. I'm really hoping it comes out. Mm-hmm. And we're both fans of Ari Aster. Like Hereditary. Well, obviously we love it. obviously
Yeah.
you really love it. It's in your top
Really,
10.
really. Yeah.
And Midsummer is really good. It's so weird and unnerving and cultish, which is like the scariest thing ever. And so, like, we're excited, but I was like, dude, nothing's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even make it through the weekend.
No.
I think it was actually the next day.
It was basically the next day. They're like, guess what? It's coming out. Here's
like,
a trailer. It's coming out in April.
Full-fledged trailer that looks incredible. It looks like it's going to be the mindfuck movie like of the year. And then they put the release date for April. I'm watching it, and I'm like, what?
Just fuming. And I was surprised it was April because I was guessing it would be early August because his first movie, Hereditary, was first Friday in June. Midsummer was first Friday in July. And so I was like, maybe it'll be the first one in August. But no, it's in April for some reason.
April. Yeah, I just kind of shook my head. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, it looks amazing.
It looks fucking weird in like such a great way.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It seems like it kind of has like Hereditary themes where it's kind of like about the very opening dialogue is his mom saying like, I'm sorry your dad gave you these things or something. And then it goes on this adventure. So kind of scary, kind of adventurous. All good adventures are kind of scary. So I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how his third outing performs. You and I have talked about,
but it's based on his original short story,
right?
So
but you and I have talked about this with like other filmmakers where they knock it out of the park for the first couple. Audiences love them and really latch to them. And then the third one comes, their third project comes out and audiences are like kind of lukewarm or they're a little more divided. So I'm curious to see if he follows that trend. And I also laugh because I'm like, I'll probably love it. I'm probably going to be a big fan of it.
Yeah, chances are very high of that, I would say. It's one of those movies that I want there to be a director's cut of already. I haven't even seen it. I don't even know if I like it. But I do know that last year, part of the reason it didn't get released is because he was fighting so hard. He had like a 4-hour cut that his studio obviously wouldn't let him release. And so I hope there's a director's cut at some point just to see. I don't want it to get ruined by just like cutting it down too much. And it probably won't be, but we'll see.
I bet, considering we've had a few, like close to, and then well over 3-hour films come out just last year.
Yeah.
That all did fairly well, ish. Yeah. They considered Babylon to be a flop, which it did kind of flop, but
it lost like $100 million or something like that. It wasn't great.
But audiences have still enjoyed it enough. I mean, its IMDb is like over 7. I want to say it's like a 7.3 or a 7.4.
Okay.
So just the fact that like long films were not rejected initially because of length might help steer studios to not worry so much about cutting that time way down.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Here I go again, trying to predict how things might turn out, which means it's going to be the opposite. And we're going to get like 20-minute films by December.
Yeah, that's true. Everything will be a Netflix miniseries.
Right.
6-episode miniseries. The other thing I was going to say, I made a big deal last episode about my spreadsheet that I made, and I said I would show you. And so for everybody who's so interested, I know everybody's dying to see it. I'm going to go ahead and share it with the world. Giving away some of my secret sauce.
Well, the secret sauce wasn't really all there.
It's all there. What the hell are you talking about? It's all there, dog. Okay.
No, I mean, by the time we got to round 14, you and I were both like, okay, we're just throwing movies out at this point.
Yeah, it's true. That's because there's a lot of junk out there.
You are a madman.
My main problem last year was not really paying attention to release dates. And so the first thing I did was color code the day that the movie comes out. So it is a gradient from green in the beginning of the year to red at the end of the year. And then also pay attention to anything that doesn't really have a date, which is the end of the year. I didn't want to select those necessarily, even though I did select two of them.
And then you got real lucky with one.
Yeah, and real unlucky with the other one, but we'll see how that turns out. So you could sort by that. You could sort by hype, which is my personal, which ones I think should be at the top. I mentioned last time that these top 6 were actually our top 6 picks.
Yeah.
So that actually worked out really well. And then I kept track of which ones were taken so I didn't look like an idiot. I estimated the rating of each, the box offices of each, if I thought audiences would like it or not. And then just notes about it, random shit. I estimated the rating in the box office against like what the first 2 movies made. And if their franchise is pretty consistent, like Creed, I think it'll probably be pretty good. So yeah, who's in it, who directed it, who that person is that directed it, why I should care. I've never seen a Greta Gerwig movie in my life, but she did Lady Bird and Little Women, so I can kind of compare to those movies maybe. She's doing Barbie. And yeah, what the budget was if they had it. I started tracking the IMDb popularity, but that changes a lot. And then I tried to pay attention to the status of it. I didn't do that with the Nightingale, obviously. But overall, I think it went pretty well. And which ones I thought would be good wild cards. I apparently couldn't take Titanic. You wouldn't let me do that, but the other ones I thought
mad about
other ones would be good wild cards. Yeah, and then I kept track of when my picks were, so I knew what months I had stuff and what months I didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel very confident that it went very well, all things considered. So there you go. I told you it was a little bit crazy.
A little bit.
A little mad.
This is like
but
neurotic. Folks, if you are only listening, you're missing like insanity organized.
I'll take it. I'll take that. That sounds good.
You had a lot of free time considering you're hanging out at home.
I told you I've been doing it for months. Literal months. Yeah.
So how many nights were there or moments were there where Christy's trying to talk to you and you're working on the spreadsheet and you were doing the what
Yeah, it was like in the Facebook movie with Jesse Eisenberg, where he like goes into the zone and he's just like, and then you see the numbers spreading around in front of his face, floating in front of his face, equations that I don't even know how to do. Yeah, that's what it was like. So yeah, there you go. I don't know if I'm embarrassed to share that or actually excited, but it is what it is.
I think it's so much more than what I was doing. I just had everything kind of color coded on when I wanted to draft it, and then as we drafted, everything stopped being color coded it, and
yeah,
now it just looks like a big old list of movies coming out this year.
We'll see which method worked better at the end of this year.
I swear to God. So I got asked at work, like, how the hell did Jake beat you? They're like, your picks were pretty good. I was like, I know. You want to know what the clincher for it was? And they're like, what? And I was like, fucking Morbius. And
yeah, I think you sound a little bitter about that still.
I'm very bitter about that one. I was like, I can accept the defeat. I'm okay. Like, it sucks, but I'll accept it.
You'll live.
But fucking Morbius helped
among
you.
Many other things.
Like, it's Morbius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was going to be the anchor around my throat for the whole season, and it ended up being a Little Mermaid that saved me. Not the Little Mermaid, but a mermaid.
A mermaid came out. Stupid.
Yeah, like a little angel. It was perfect. Anyway, enough recapping last week. I'm sure you heard it all already. Actually, a lot of that's new, so go listen to it anyway if you haven't. So this week we're going to talk. I kind of teased it, giving away the misdemeanors
I teased it by
committed.
completely telling you.
I told you the misdemeanors I've committed recently. We are talking about copyright and intellectual property and piracy and a lot of very interesting things. I know it sounds boring on the surface to say we're talking about movie copyright, but honestly, it's very relevant, especially this year and today. A lot of stuff going on.
There's a big thing happening this year, and it might have a huge impact on future copyright laws and intellectual property. This got trying to research this for me was so weird, and I just there's so much. I don't even know where to really start taking notes. There's so much. This really felt. It put me back in the having to do research for an essay. I was like, this is odd.
Yeah, it's true. I hope you used MLA formatting, because if not, it doesn't count. Just throw it out.
I use my own because fuck the system.
Nice. So yeah, we're not lawyers. We don't know anything about anything. We just Googled some stuff, formed some opinions, had some pre-existing opinions, and so just keep that in mind. None of this is legal advice. I had one site
that I went to just trying to learn some history on copyright in general. That was all I was initially looking for, was just give me a little history. When did this stuff come out? All that. And I found a website. It was breaking down the history, and I'm scrolling, I'm reading, taking a couple notes. I'm doing my thing. And I get this little pop-up. Hello there. Welcome to our site. How may we be of assistance? And I was like, the fuck? You can't. It would not let me close out the little the chat thing.
I thought you were going to say you had a very interesting conversation with the chat bot.
No. It weirded me out. I was like, I'm just trying to read. You need to go away. You gotta fuck off.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So one of the main things you do need to know about copyright and intellectual property, as it pertains to media and books and all of this stuff, we're mostly obviously concerned about it as it pertains to movies. But if you do not have the rights to a property or a character, then you can be sued by someone who does. So people own a character, they own a story, and if you copy them, then they will sue you, because anything that you make from it, like if you make a movie and you make money from it, they see it as stealing that, because that's money they should have earned, because it's their thing, basically. Which is a little weird, but it's generally, I guess, how things go. It's just meant to prevent people from copying someone else's thing and selling it, which is generally good, generally noble. I think protecting content creators is probably a good call. It gets extra weird because after you've created something, that is a tangible thing that you can sell to other people, and then they own it. And there's a lot of effort around going on and attacking people for using somebody else's stuff. One of my thoughts about copyright in general is that the whole idea, it seems to be kind of predicated on assuming that two different people cannot come up with the same idea independently.
Right.
That if you have something that is similar, very similar to this other person's thing, then you have to have copied it, or you can't do it because they did it first, kind of thing. There doesn't seem to be much of an emphasis on intent or proving that I even have heard of your thing, so I'm going to copy it.
Well, I came across copyright's always been kind of weird to me. I agree with the principle of protecting someone's creation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in terms of movie making or making TV shows or plays, the copyright technically begins from pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was reading, they flat out say as soon as a story is written, as soon as like the creator puts this idea down, it's basically copyrighted to that person. It is theirs to own, theirs to distribute and sell if they want. And in terms of movie making, it was crazy to see. It ended up, I came across this thing where it broke down like the role of a movie producer. And I realized while I was reading it that I've kind of grossly underestimated the role of a producer. It was like,
yeah, I have as well.
They don't just toss out the money to pay for the production. I mean, that's a part of it. But they're in charge of obtaining and creating every possible copyright for every person who is going to work on this one script or this one story. Because they have to like copyright every version. And I thought that was interesting and a little weird.
Yeah, I think it's super weird. Yeah, they just handle a lot of like, I guess, the business stuff and the legal stuff and all of that stuff that you don't really pay attention to. There have been a lot of examples of major movies who have gotten in trouble or gotten to like legal hot water with someone for using something that they weren't supposed to, or their movie was very similar to somebody else's story or movie or whatever. I think the most famous, or maybe not most famous, but one of the more interesting ones is for Sergio Leone's, I think it was for Fistful of Dollars. He had kind of gotten in trouble and had to go to court for, everybody kind of recognizes it already as being very similar to Kurosawa's movie Yojimbo, which is, as some people say, it's an homage or a unofficial remake. But because it was unofficial, he was going to court, and Kurosawa even said, like, I like the movie. Fistful of Dollars is a great movie, but it's my movie. And so he felt that it was so similar that they took him to court, and they settled out of court due to the legal pressure. And I think it's rumored that they paid $100,000 and 15% of Fistful of Dollars worldwide box office, which is crazy. I mean, that's a huge cut of your profits and margin for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't take the necessary steps to figure it out, you can definitely totally get screwed over.
Well, even
whether you meant to or not,
I
which
think
is
it was
kind of the weird thing.
The first Frozen even got itself in a little bit of hot water. I forget who it was or what country it was, but I want to say it was some lady accused Disney of stealing her story, and her story was essentially Frozen, just without like a cute snowman to be your comedic relief, right?
Yeah.
But everything got settled, and it was deemed like, no, Disney did not rip off your story. I guess she couldn't prove like date of creation or whatever. I forget all the details on it, but that one I remember seeing and kind of starting to follow when it was happening. I also thought it was interesting when that happened because Frozen had already been released in theaters and come out on Blu-ray and like physical platform. And it was shortly after it was released on a physical platform that this lady came out and was like, oh, you stole my story. And I thought that was kind of shady.
Yeah. I mean, on some level, you have to see it in order to know it's like your thing, in order to file all of the stuff you need to file. But yeah, if you can't prove when you created your story,
right,
then there's no way to know that, you didn't just see it was successful and say, oh yeah, I totally made that story already. Unless you can prove that you did it way before or any time before, that's all that really matters.
And I thought it was real, I don't know if I'd say ballsy per se, kind of, to go against Disney, claiming that Disney stole your shit. Disney is kind of like the front runner when it comes to these properties, to the copyright laws themselves. Disney is like completely responsible for copyright laws being what they are.
They're, as a company, they're entirely based on owning property, intellectual property, and using those characters to monetize them and make Disneyland and Disney World and all of the different movies, and buying Star Wars and buying Marvel and all of this stuff. They own all of these things, which are assets that nobody else can use. But over time, it's also interesting because they started out as a company that not started, but like are most well known for like the Disney princess movies from like back in the day, which were stories that were not copywritten, that were based on like Snow White and
they're all
the Seven Dwarfs and
there's
Sleeping
a good
Beauty.
number of them that came from Hans Christian Andersen's writings, like his fairy tales inspired the beloved Disney stories.
Right. They were kind of just common myths that were in the public domain that were easily accessible. Then they made their movies and their versions, and then of course copyrighted those versions. And so you can't do a Snow White thing that's like that kind of Snow White, at least at this point. But because copyright only lasts for a set amount of time. If it's different in every country, so it depends on where you're from. But generally, the general rule in the United States is that copyright will last for the life of the author plus an additional 70 years.
75 years, right? But they also they set up like there is an international copyright now. I forget when it was early 2000s, I think, is when they finally agreed on this whole act that Great Britain came up with or wrote. But the copyright laws do kind of like it, they travel now. So it's not only based in like Europe or in England where it's copyrighted and then America can do whatever. They've actually, they restructured the whole act just to make sure copyrighted material travels. So if it's copyrighted here, it's going to be documented and copyrighted over there. I think
it makes a lot of sense for the world we live in, where everything is everywhere all at once. It's like there was a movie about that recently, but everything is on the internet and it can go anywhere and be anything at any time.
That was the big push for why they created like this huge global copyright was because late 90s, early 2000, the internet was kind of really showcasing it or starting to showcase itself for being just this monopoly highway of information.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think it was a very smart move for these copyright acts to be put into an international of like these people coming together and thinking, all right, this is going to change everything and how we handle stuff, how we release properties, how we anything. So I think like one good things that the government did was protect all of this creative material globally instead of just here, or the timelines also travel. So I agree with that. I think that's good. I like copyright to a point. There's some like it gets real nitpicky.
Yeah, there's a lot of obvious benefits to it that I think a lot of people would agree with. Just generally, it seems like a good thing. But like with everything, especially when it comes to legal system and the government, there's trade-offs, and it hurts these people. And so I think we'll talk about that a little bit. But the general rule, like globally and in the United States and all this stuff, seems to be if you a copyright endures for a term of 95 years from the year that it was first published, or if you didn't publish it, or if it expires 120 years from the year of its creation. So if you, like you said, as soon as you put pen to paper or whatever, however you make it, it works for movies, all this stuff, 120 years after you first made it, or 95 years after it was published, whichever ends first, that's when it ends. But it does end. And there's a time when that thing is so old, all of the creator is no longer alive, obviously. And so it goes into the public domain and anybody can use it.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about, Disney is a huge target for all of this stuff, especially not just because they own all of these different properties. They started out with, obviously, everybody knows Mickey Mouse and Disney. It's synonymous. I saw a thing recently that Mickey Mouse is more recognizable globally than Santa Claus even is.
I would believe that. I would, because not every country is going to recognize Santa Claus, but also the Mickey Mouse logo has essentially never changed. Just the silhouette logo, it's never changed. And it is, unlike Santa Claus, who only shows up once a year, like all the merchandising, all the imagery is really once a year. Mickey Mouse is all the time.
Right. Which is why it's so interesting that the first version of Mickey Mouse, that Steamboat Willie character, that the short that I'm sure everybody's seen a little clip of, it was released in hold on, let me find it. It's about to enter the public domain, and so it's kind of a big
next
deal
year.
that Disney in 19 oh wait, no, that's something else. 95 years from today, so I think it was 1926. Hold on, where's that? Oh, I just wrote down. It ends end of this year. So January 1st of 2024, Steamboat Willie's version of Mickey Mouse is going to have its copyright removed, which I expect Disney to kind of be sweating. They've already, I mean, obviously they don't make a ton of money from Steamboat Willie. They don't really care. And it's not all of Mickey Mouse. Like the later versions of Mickey Mouse with the big white gloves and everything, they've updated them over the years. And those versions are still theirs that they own. But it's certainly interesting that those things start coming due. It's not that common that, not only is it not common that a company will base its entire identity on intellectual property in this way that Disney does it, but it's also not that common that a company will be this big 95 years after it was first creating a little animated short, So it's a unique, I guess, kind of scenario. Which
I'm kind of curious to see. I feel like people these days have kind of forgotten about, or just never even learned in the first place, that Steamboat Willie was technically the first iteration of the mouse. Mickey Mouse was changed and renamed shortly after that, or a little ways after that. So I'm curious to see if, a couple things. Curious to see if anyone actually tries to use the Steamboat Willie image for whatever.
Yeah.
And if people do, if anyone else is actually going to recognize it. And then I'm also curious to see if Disney does what it has been doing like every couple decades of going and lobbying to let's reform the Copyright Act again.
They successfully extended copyright protections in 1998, and I wouldn't doubt that they would have a vested interest in doing it more. They're a very big company with more money than God, and it's kind of crazy.
They have more lawyers than I think should probably
Mhm.
actually exist on the planet, but they probably have them all.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. And I think that people will try to use the Steamboat Willie character, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I also think that there will be a lot of people that misinterpret what's happening, and they're like, Mickey Mouse is a public domain now. Use the wrong version and have Mickey
And
Mouse's
get in a
lawyer
whole
swarm
heap of
on
trouble.
them.
I have
Yeah.
already seen people, like some people saying, "Oh, Mickey Mouse is going to be public domain. We get to, like, Disney no longer owns it." And I had to laugh at those people. And it kind of reminded me, bear with me, this is going to be one of my crazy connections.
Okay, can't wait.
It reminded me of people's reactions to when Colorado legalized marijuana.
Yeah.
So the bill passed, and it was like the next morning,
Yeah.
everyone thought they could walk around out in public, hitting their pipes, smoking their joints, and there wasn't a damn thing the government could do to them.
Yeah.
And the government came out and was like, it passed. Nothing's been signed. It is not in effect yet.
Even when it is signed, it will have a date on it when it goes into effect and all this stuff.
There is a process. And people just didn't, I guess, pay attention. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like that's some of these people, because I did see people saying, "Oh, Mickey Mouse is ours now next year," and it was like, no, he's not.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's kind of bizarre to me in my weird anarchist brain that something is totally okay tomorrow, but it's not okay today. Mm-hmm. Having that line drawn arbitrarily is kind of weird.
It's weird,
I think, but it is the way it is, and but Disney having that army of lawyers that just descend on people, they have a fine line to walk. It seems like, because they've kind of done that in the past. I think it was 2006. Disney told a stonemason that was trying to carve Winnie the Pooh into a child's gravestone that he couldn't do that. He's infringing on their copyright.
Right.
And at some point, you're like, it's a dead kid who just wants it on come on. And just a couple of years ago, a Disney affiliate charged a school $250 because they showed The Lion King at a fundraiser, and they said that it violated their copyright. And but the good news is that there was such a media shitstorm that Disney apologized, and the head of Disney actually donated to their charity or whatever. And so I think that's the one thing Disney cares about more than their intellectual property is their image. Their public image is they will prioritize that above everything else. If anybody thinks it's not a magical, wonderful place, then all
which is so evident these days, because Disney has catered so heavily to public image right now. So yeah, this probably isn't the episode to talk about that, but I already brought it up. Disney, it's so weird for me to talk shit about Disney because they've been such a integral piece of my life and upbringing and my child's life and upbringing.
Everybody's life.
Disney is Disney's everywhere. I love a good amount of Disney movies. I don't love all their movies. Some of their movies are just this is not good. But I mean, when my daughter was a baby growing up, toddler age and all that, I can't tell you how many episodes of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse we watched. It was nuts. But being a fan of Disney, I feel almost obligated to still be able to point out stop putting the public image ahead of everything else, because I think I think Disney's lost a lot of footing in worrying so much about catering to woke culture.
Yeah.
And it's been so evident the last couple of years. They just keep getting worse and worse. And it's like infected the MCU. It's infected Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's infected everything they've touched.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the limit of that is, because I know that, I mean, obviously there's a big market and a lot of pressure, especially in Hollywood, to cater to that woke culture stuff. But also in normal life for normal people, they are either ambivalent and don't care about it, or they actively reject it.
Right.
And so there, I think, could be a line where you get to a point where you're doing way more than people actually want, and it's hurting the actual quality of the movies or whatever. If you ever get to that point, or it's so blatant and distracting from the actual story and actual characters that people just reject it, that could also harm their image.
Oh yeah. And so, anyways, back to what we were talking about. Sorry, folks.
It's interesting that I think there's several ways. Like I said before, it's kind of a tightrope that they're walking, where they don't want to damage their public image by being too litigious or whatever, but they also need to defend their properties.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the only ones that can hurt their image. One thing I'm sure they're worried about with Mickey Mouse, even if it's older versions of Mickey Mouse, is that people associate that with Disney. Like, it's synonymous with Disney forever, and everybody sees Mickey Mouse, they think Disney. If he leaves their wheelhouse or clubhouse, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, then all of a sudden it could be confusing for audiences, and you could have somebody who very legally can use that property and make something crazy, perverse even, and now people are like, whoa, wow, why did Disney put Mickey Mouse in that scenario?
Right.
We have the exact thing happening this year. I know you've been very vocally against the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movie that's coming out, that you don't think it's a good idea to take this sweet, perfect, gentle, innocent child's story by A.A. Milne that Disney bought, that the original books from A.A. Milne have left, their copyright has ended, and now they've entered public domain as of 2022. So the first thing that somebody did was make this horror movie called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and used these guys in Winnie the Pooh and piglet masks are massacring people. I think it looks kind of fun. I will definitely see it, but I'm not like attached, I think, to the actual original property.
And I don't associate Winnie the Pooh with Disney, which is kind of funny, weird for me, because I know Disney has owned them for the longest fucking time.
Yeah.
But I do, when I see Winnie the Pooh and all those characters, the 100 Acre Wood, Christopher Robin, yada yada, and I know I talked about this in our tier, or our movies that make us cry episode. I associate all those characters with like the better parts of our existence, like the purity of it, the innocence, the
humanity,
just the importance of enjoying life and the simplicity in life and all that. So I associate a lot of like crazy positivity, very healthy positivity to these characters. And this one's weird for me because this is one of those moments where I kind of wish that the characters were still copyrighted. Just to prevent this, because this, to me, like, it's a natural thing. You said Disney might be fearful that Steamboat Willie's going to follow the same trend. I think it will, especially being like pure old school Disney, whereas Winnie the Pooh was kind of an acquired property.
Right.
I totally think someone instantly is going to be like, let's make a Steamboat Willie animation. It's going to be full of sex. It's going to be full of just murder. It's going to be full of every horrible thing out there. And it's going to
be the anti-Disney movie.
Oh, it will be. And it will. Yeah. I actually think whoever does this is going to make it blatantly obvious. It won't be a like tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I think it's gonna pretty much just call Disney out for everything over all these years.
Yeah. Which they have done a lot of things that kind of need calling out. So
Oh, yeah.
could be used for good, could be used for evil. It's hard to
But
judge.
it's another one of those things where I think people like me, maybe not with like Winnie the Pooh, but with Mickey Mouse, Disney in general, there's still a greater percentage of people that associate all the things I associate with Winnie the Pooh, they associate with Disney in general. And I kind of think people are going to have similar reactions as I do, or at least I hope they kind of do. It's so weird because I'm not going to watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Okay.
I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens with it. And it is only those original A.A. Milne like characters, and not even Tigger. I think Tigger came out a couple of years later in another book, and so he isn't allowed to be used in this first movie. But if it becomes like a franchise,
Right.
and it comes out a couple of years from now, then he will be public domain. At least that version of him, not the like Disney version with their art style and Pooh with the red shirt and all that stuff.
I think, well, that's what the rule was, if I remember reading right. They can use the images of Winnie the Pooh minus the shirt.
Yeah.
Like the red shirt
like
was a different iteration, which was an interesting thing that you brought up about Mickey Mouse, the character, because they have changed his image several times. They've like updated him essentially.
Yeah.
Him and Minnie Mouse and all of them, their images have all been updated throughout time. So I think that's also kind of setting up people to get in trouble because someone's going to use the wrong image, maybe not just with Steamboat, but as the characters. It gets so detailed that it is like that version is public domain, but this version is not, and they can look almost identical to the point where you could mess it up real easily. It's going to be like the Vanilla Ice and oh my god, Freddie Mercury, the whole
that song,
Ice Ice Baby and
Under Pressure.
Under Pressure. I think it's going to be like that just for the rest of time now.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing where Disney, I think, at least at first, was just updating the style of Mickey Mouse to keep up with the times and rejuvenate him and make younger generations interested in him. But it has had kind of a side effect of proactively protecting the copyright of that version. If they never updated him ever, then they would lose all Mickey Mouse,
right?
Now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But you mentioned that you kind of wish that the original Winnie the Pooh property at least stayed in the hands of the creator, that what never became public domain or couldn't become public domain, and then people couldn't do whatever they want with it. I think it's interesting to kind of like compare and contrast what happens, because it's a weird thing. I part of me agrees, and part of me is like, actually, I think the exact opposite should happen.
Right.
Because it depends so much on what it is, and so that's why it's so hard to make a decision, I think. Because yes, generally I think that the creator of something should have that thing protected and not let other people steal it, and especially smaller people, smaller creators that have come up with this thing, they're trying to get it made, and it's hard to do. It's hard to get something made and published and be successful. It's very easy for someone who has all of the money and means and a working system to see something, take it, publish it, put it out really quickly, and to a mass audience, they can distribute it everywhere, and then you're kind of boned. So I do think that should be protected in some way. But there's no guarantee that an actual like creator is going to actually protect something and make it good and make it what it should be, I guess, because there have been a lot of creators that ruined the things that they own. And so it's hard to really say like I'm thinking of George Lucas.
I know. Yeah, I was like, oh, he's calling out Lucas right here.
If that isn't obvious, because at what point, I know that when copyright ends and things enter the public domain, everybody owns them, quote unquote. You can do whatever you want. You can buy these old stories for free on, like, you can buy these old books for free on like your iPads or whatever. So everybody owns the things that are in public domain. They're just generally available. It's a weird thing, though, that once you make a movie like Star Wars and you release it to the world and everybody loves it, they kind of take it and they kind of feel like they own it in a way, because they have seen the story, they've interpreted these characters and they've connected to them. And even setting aside the fact that they're going to then write fan fiction and make fan movies and all of this stuff, like there's a massive thing. And a lot of the fan movies I've seen are better than the prequels. So it's very true that I think that when you release something, you don't own it anymore in some way. Maybe legally, yes, you do, at least at this point. But practically, when you release something out into the world, everybody's going to take it and do their own thing with it. Not even talking about like putting it online and spreading it and sharing it and making their own money from it. They'll do that, and they're trying to stop that and whatever. We'll probably talk about that. But just in your mind, you own that thing. And so when the original creator, who should know best, his name is George Lucas, and he has invented these characters, and he has envisioned for years how Han Solo thinks and behaves and what he would do and what he wouldn't do. And then you make Star Wars, and it is great. And everybody's like, oh, I love that Han Solo character, and I love how he's like kind of a rebel and ruffian, and he kills Greedo and he shoots first, and that's so cool. And then George Lucas is like, no, that's not him at all. And I'm going to re-edit the movie. I'm going to add new effects to it. I'm going to then completely erase the original version so nobody can find them or buy them or whatever. And this is what I meant. This is what I meant for the character to be. And everybody's like, no, that's not the character. That's not the character I saw. That's not the character I love. That's not the character that you made. So I reject this thing. Yeah. Like, who owns that? Who's right in that scenario?
I don't know. Like, as I was saying that about Winnie the Pooh, even internally, my brain was like, you don't completely side with what you just said. And I don't. This is why this whole thing has like kind of thrown me for a loop, because I see points on both sides of this fence. And I kept coming back to a lot of what you were saying. And by the way, folks, if you have been listening to us long enough, you should know Jake was not just generalizing audiences. He was talking about himself specifically.
Yes, I am audiences.
You should go listen to our Star Wars episode. It's just full of hot takes, and it's back in the day. Fucking Star Wars. And I started thinking in terms of, and obviously we're sticking with movies. A movie gets released in the theater. People go watch it. People connect to it. I connect to a lot of them. I want more of it. I like to immerse myself in that story, those characters. The movie gets released, and if it's a movie that really hit me, which typically they do, I will go and purchase a copy of it, right? I'll go and buy the Blu-ray, DVD when they were DVDs, VHS when it was VHS. I'll buy a copy.
Right.
But then after I purchase said copy, I, like everyone else that will go out and buy these movies, we claim I own that movie. I totally see where you're coming from. I totally agree with most of it, I think. I'm pretty sure I do. I don't know. I don't think there's a set in stone, because I do agree with you. When a movie is released, your audience kind of takes ownership of that story, of those characters, are going to interpret it how they, I mean, we do it every episode. We interpret a film how we see Whether
Yeah.
that was the actual intended vision or not,
Right.
up in the air.
Right.
Same goes
And
for
I
like,
think that's how it should be.
yeah,
That is definitely how it should be, that everybody, when they see something, they bring their own thought process, their own experience and stuff to it. Nobody sees the same movie, really. Some people like this thing more, some people like that thing more, some people like this thing more. Some people say it's great, some people say it sucks. It's both at the same time.
right.
And that's how it should be, is that people see something and they make it their own thing in a way. Oh, that's a very cool mug you have there. Time out for a little ad break. Go get
Shameless
your movie
plug.
bonus merch. That's a sweet 6 to midnight mug.
Well, the same goes for like music. And this was also a big interesting thing. And oddly enough, I did not find the story I expected to see in all this research for copyright in terms of like entertainment, the creative arts.
Yeah.
Music is an interesting thing to use also as an example of this exact same thing, because musicians are very well known to say our audience owns this music. Like, we release the album, we get our cut when people go and purchase this.
Yeah.
But it's theirs essentially to do with what they want. But then they made the laws on like, you can't burn CDs. Kids, it was a thing in the 90s and early 2000s. Go check it out. That was what we did. They said you can't burn an album because it's copying the material, right?
It's literally copying.
It's literally copy paste. And then everyone provided you with the tools to go and do said illegal thing.
Right.
When VHS was around and they were going to play a movie on TV, for a lot of us, especially as kids, we would take a blank VHS tape, put it in the VCR, record the movie from TV, and then claim, I have a copy. It was the exact same thing as pirating a movie, but it was encouraged. And all of a sudden we hit a digital age, and it's all been like discouraged.
Right. Yeah, I did the same thing with music on the radio. I didn't really even know who this band was. I couldn't go to the store to buy this song, but I could pop in a cassette tape and hit record as soon as it came on. I could wait all day.
You would have to wait and listen to the radio.
Once it played, I would record it, and that song would be mine forever.
Yeah. And it was encouraged to do that. Like, it was said in the news.
The technology kind of encouraged it as well. It was very cheap, easily accessible. Everybody had the means to do it.
And it spread the word. And so I use the example of doing that with the music, with movies, because I started coming across a bunch of articles where, like, you can get sued by a production company or by these movie folk for showing having a movie night with people not part of your household.
Yeah, it's you get, like, at the very basic level, it seems to make sense of, you're not allowed to take a copy of this person's work, make money off of it, and claim it was your work, because that seems like a problem. Yeah, I think everybody pretty much agrees.
I think that's okay.
But then you get further and further down, and it gets grayer and grayer and grayer. And then they're like, yeah, you can't have other people watch this. You can't show this to people. I can't let you borrow a movie that I purchased because you wouldn't purchase it yourself. And so they're losing money. You need to purchase it or rent it or whatever. You need to go through the approved channels. You need to go to the theater and buy a ticket. You can't watch what I put online for you to stream for free or stream for free with ads because I'm making money from my ads. It's a weird thing, I think, especially for us, because we are that generation that grew up with VHS and DVDs and the internet, the very beginnings of the internet, which was the Wild West. If you don't know, if you could download anything from the internet with, like, I ruined so many computers with LimeWire trying to just find a song. I was like, I really want this Creed song. and it says exe on the end. I don't know what that means. I'll just click it, and then computer completely boned forever. But I got a ton of free music and a ton of free movies and very low bit rate, but whatever. And that's still the thing. The internet is not going away anywhere unless we get hit by an EMP. So there's limits to what they can do. If they could do everything they wanted to, they would be everything would be like DRM'd on the blockchain, and they'd be able to know every person that streamed this thing, where they streamed it, and shut it down. It's not movie related, but the UFC does this, not that exact thing, but a lot of this, where their pay-per-views are pretty expensive.
Yep.
So people will just stream online the fights, but they're constantly like up for 5 minutes and then they get taken down, and then up for 10 minutes and then they get taken down, because they're actively constantly trying to like throw a blanket over these things so that people aren't watching their content for free, which I get, but at the same time, you're putting it out there in the world to people. And then once it's out of your hands, it's really hard to control it.
Well, it's also weird to me because the creative arts industry, movies, TV, music, books, etc., artwork, like paintings, sketches, all this, you don't grow your audience by creating limitations. You grow your audience through word of mouth. It is so heavily relied on, or it relies so heavily on, you make one fan here. It's like a pyramid scheme, right?
Yeah.
You get this one guy, he's going to show your work or show this movie to, we'll say 3 people. Those 3 people are going to show the movie, and that's the idea. And so I think it's so weird. I mean, I totally agree with not allowing people to profit off of what you did. That I understand, like you said. For them to take your movie, show it to a bunch of people, make money off of it, and then claim it was theirs to begin with. That makes sense to get a little upset about that.
Yeah. But
to like fine schools for showing a movie, for threatening jail time for people that want to have like a group hang out and watch a movie, because they they threaten it. Like,
yeah, I think you're right. I think that that model, which you described, works mostly for like people who are trying to get their things seen.
Yeah.
Like bands or movie creators or something. They want to get it seen. So yeah, definitely just put it out there. It doesn't matter if they pay for it or not. That's always good. When you're Disney, everybody knows about you.
True.
And I think that you feel like you don't need the publicity. Everybody knows. You've already spent $1 trillion on marketing. Everybody knows. But there's also those people that you can't just like force them and say, you owe me money because you watched my thing online or whatever, and you owe me money. That it's not like I much prefer the model where you make something so good that I see it, whether I saw it for free or if I paid to see it, I feel like it was worth it. And if I see it for free and I'm like, oh, wow, that was great, I want to either buy it physically and go give you my money. I will go to your website and buy it from you because I want to support you because I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
I prefer when people voluntarily decide this thing is worth giving my money to, and not either being tricked into it because you have to see it in the movie theater, otherwise you go straight to jail. And when you see it in the movie theater, you don't really know if it's actually going to be good or not.
Yeah.
So I think that there's no real problem with somebody who owns something sharing it with the people around them. That, especially if it's their family, that makes perfect sense. If it's their friends, that makes perfect sense. If they share it around them with their friends on the internet, meaning anybody who has the link or can find the link, and now there's thousands of people who have downloaded this thing. I don't think that's really that different.
Yeah.
This person has access to this thing that they have bought or watched or streamed or whatever. And if they just spread it on, I don't think that that's that illegal, although the government and everybody else would tell you that that is illegal. So it's definitely tricky, but I think that a lot of the gray area stuff shouldn't be gray area and should be okay. Because there's all of the stuff that you actually care about is like the surface.
Yeah.
And then everything down below is like muck. Like
everything down below is the blatant greediness, if you will.
Yeah.
That it's all the lawyer jargon. Right. That's all that gray area. Any chance, like, how do we stop people from fully enjoying this? How do we make a buck on this? We need to profit off of boundaries and or limitations.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So, I mean,
I don't like the gray area.
Yeah. The gray area is awkward for one thing. Like I said before, I'm in the middle in the sense where I do want to protect creators, especially the small creators, and I want them to be able to protect it. But I think that when something gets big, like I said, the creator could ruin it. Even though you own the property to Halloween Ends and Michael Myers, maybe you shouldn't own that property. Or I don't care if you do own that property, but other people should be able to try to make it as well.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting to me where the line is with like fan films and stuff. Cause I know people are like kind of okay with it, but if you get too successful, then they're like, no, you can't do that because they want you to like, oh, you made a cute little YouTube video. That's fine. And then as soon as it like you're turning it into a movie and all this stuff, like, no, you can't do that. I would really like to see people make different attempts at things, like make a different attempts at these really gritty, cool Star Wars. I would maybe care about Star Wars again if somebody tried that, or Halloween or what have you. Like if somebody else tries to make something and they do something well, that should be rewarded. That should be a good thing. Like, you should be allowed to do that and benefit from it. If people like it, then people like it, and you should do well and not be punished for making something that's good. That seems weird to me.
I agree. I think
same for like Marvel and DC and all this stuff.
I feel like I can never follow the actual guidelines because I don't think there is an actual set guideline. It really is case by case, and I guess how pissy the copyright folk are at the moment that they happen to we'll use YouTube. At the moment, there's so many videos of like reaction videos to music or to trailers. There's fan films all over YouTube. There's homemade music videos posted on YouTube. Homages to movies, what have you.
Yeah.
And they've got like millions of views. They've got this stuff and they seem to be okay. And then you hear stories of like someone that'll have, an image and they're like reprimanded for having an image. And it's like, the fuck?
Right.
So it never feels consistent. And I totally lost track of what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is, it seems to be if you really want to do something, you need to get permission.
Yeah.
And if you have permission, then you can do pretty much whatever. But a lot of times it's hard to figure out who to get permission from. Like if I'm like, hey, I would really like to do this Batman related thing. And then I'm like, hey, Warner Brothers, can I please do this Batman thing? They're like, sorry, we don't. I'm like, oh, hey, DC, cinema, whatever. Can I do this thing? No, sorry, we can't help you with that. And so there's a lot of those things that are really difficult to actually figure out.
Yeah.
But we've had that problem as well, where you put something online, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever, and then they take it down. They say, "Oh, sorry, nope, you can't do that. That you had a 10-second clip of this trailer from this movie, and Universal said, sorry, no, that can't happen."
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we're transforming the media. We're commenting on it. We're talking about it. We're having a discussion about it. And sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not okay, and it really depends on that. And if they get real pissy about it, then they can send you letters, and they'll say, "Hey, we're going to take you to court unless you pay like a settlement fee."
Right.
And that is like, and then you're like, you feel bullied because you're like, well, I don't want to go to court and I don't want to pay a lot more money, so maybe I'll pay a little money. It's very like kind of scary how they can like
it's just goofy.
Send their armies of lawyers after you.
Yeah, there's no consistency to the laws.
Yeah, I'm just a dude who found an image on Google Images, and that's not a hard thing to do. My grandma can do that. And now you want to take
Google, I can't imagine. Oh, okay. So I said that, and my phone just
Google's
lit
listening.
up.
No, Google, don't listen to this.
Yeah. I can't imagine what their legal team looks like, and I can't imagine a single member of the legal team there ever gets to rest.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a 24-hour job.
That like they have to be doing settlement after settlement while approving. Like,
yeah,
you're lucky you're
probably have
the
a lot
monopoly of the internet, because damn. Yeah, I think it's just it gets a little frustrating. And then I always laugh because I've noticed on like YouTube videos, and YouTube is a huge example of all the copyright and the all this stuff, because YouTube went from like a little cat video playing a goddamn piano to now it's like YouTube TV. People rely on YouTube. You can take classes on YouTube. It's
they have billions and billions of users. It's like the entire world has a YouTube account.
It is insane. I feel like we're not allowed to really talk it too much. Well, we can, but
this podcast is literally on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. But I've had to shake my head over the years, even before we had our show, at seeing the stuff and seeing content creators posting messages saying, "Hey, I got shut out for X amount of time because I apparently broke this copyright law or infringed on it," is what they like to say. "I'll be back shortly." And then you'll see like a fan made video. I don't want to call it a fan film, but it's like someone in their living room reenacting a scene of a movie or playing music. And all they have is, "I don't own the rights. This is just like whatever." And it's kind of one of those things where you shake your head and you're like, that one line is your whole saving grace. Just the little acknowledgement of like, not mine, just doing this.
Yeah, in case it wasn't obvious, but I am not the owner of Star Wars.
Right. But here's me reenacting all of Star Wars. Here's me reacting to a scene in Star Wars. And they'll play like a full clip. I just think it's funny that one line, it brings me back to like in movies where there's a giant plot hole that they have to fill up, and they're like, just have a line. It's like Thank You from Smoking. That's the movie that makes fun of this. Like,
just put a line of dialogue.
Line of dialogue to clear it all up, and we move on.
Yeah, it's very weird. Quickly before we leave YouTube and fans making things better than they already were or should be, I am grateful for the internet, because bringing it all the way back to George Lucas again, when he scrubbed the original versions and you couldn't buy them. If you had an original VHS, you were okay, but good luck getting that VHS to Blu-ray quality. Everybody's just like, well, I want the Blu-rays. I just want the original theatrical. That's all I want. And he's like, no, absolutely not. You will never, ever get that in your life. And then the beauty of fans is that they took these specialized editions with all of the added CGI and added scenes and all this stuff and fixed it. And they removed the CGI and they re-edited it. Yep. And they despecialized it. And you can find, if you are diligent, you can find the despecialized versions of the original trilogy online. I don't recommend doing it. This is not legal advice, but
right.
If you like Star Wars, you definitely should do it.
But don't.
And you couldn't do that. I mean, you shouldn't do that. George Lucas doesn't like that. Disney doesn't like that because that is not the version, the approved version, the lore, like the canon version. And so that's not allowed, but it's better and it's what most people want. And it's bizarre that that is like a crime against humanity to do.
I think I've said this before on the show. Now, I don't have a VHS player, but I do have the original cut on VHS in the box set.
Nice.
But I don't have a VHS player. So I treat them as kind of just like a little collector piece. Right?
Yeah. Someday in the apocalypse, if you ever come across one, you'll be able to pop them in.
Yeah. Hopefully. Hopefully the film isn't all fucked up. But
yeah. My dad asked the other day if I had a VHS player. I was like, I am so sorry. I do not have a VHS. Try Goodwill. They might have a VHS player.
Yes. I'm sure I could find one online.
I bet when you pop it in, Return of the Jedi is just going to be worn out in that one spot where Leia's in the gold bikini. It's like, why is all there static?
It's just going to go staticky across, and you're like, damn it, the tracking's all fucked up.
Damn it, 13-year-old me. That was how VHS worked, kids. Don't worry about it. But it's easier, like we were saying about YouTube, it's easier than ever for people to create content and react to things. Or if you're filming a reaction video, we've watched trailers and done reactions a little bit. If you're filming a reaction video, you're reacting to something that is out in public, essentially. Mm-hmm. It's like sitting on a park bench and saying, oh, look, this person on a trolley is coming by. That's generally the same thing as being like, oh, I'm on a free platform that is just able to put something in front of my eyes and I can form thoughts and say them out loud to people. That's exactly what it is. So if you're on Instagram, if you're on TikTok, if you're whatever, it takes 2 seconds to create content and people are doing it more and more and more. And so it's just becoming more and more impossible for, I think, things to crack down on intellectual property, which may not be bad. Like I was saying, it may, intellectual property, like we've been talking about it, and copyright is kind of like a bunch of different things and kind of ventured into the piracy section of the conversation. These aren't people that are like, oh, I made a story and it's about a man named Sluke Skywalker. And like, these are just people who are very obviously talking about something that is made by Universal Studios and just forming an opinion about it. And that's their content. But that stuff, I think, still follows under the same umbrella of this is our thing and we want to share it the way we want to share it. And you can't do it, or you need to do it in a very specific way. And if you don't, you get in trouble.
You can get in a lot of trouble. It's crazy.
Yeah. What was I going to bring up? Oh, the other thing that is entering the public domain this year, in addition to Winnie the Pooh, is Sherlock Holmes.
Yep.
Which is interesting. It's interesting. I haven't really paid attention to like what enters the public domain when, but Googling this, I was like, wow, pretty much every year there's like several articles that are like, here are all of the musical pieces and books and movies and everything that's entering the public domain because it's from 95 years ago. And there has been a big debate around the character of Sherlock Holmes for a while because the original book was already in public domain, but this year marks the year that the last Arthur Conan Doyle original book entered public domain. So now his entire set, I guess, compendium or whatever, is in public domain. So he is officially a public character.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
I think that one, I mean, we've already had so many iterations of the character. My daughter and I were actually just talking about Sherlock Holmes a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, do you know who Sherlock Holmes was or is? And she was like, wasn't he a famous detective? And I was like, I mean, and then I paused. Do you think Sherlock Holmes was real? She goes, well, yeah, he was real, right? I was like, no. But
he's a historical figure.
Literary, yeah. I think Sherlock Holmes being a public character is definitely interesting. I don't know if we're going to see a boom in Sherlock Holmes stuff. I think an interesting thing about these characters that are so old, that have been around for so long, with today's generations, none of them seem to know who these characters are. They kind of they've heard the names or they've heard references, but no one seems to really know the characters. So I think what makes it interesting is maybe at some point down the road, this generation starts actually finding out who these characters are and then realizing we can kind of do our own version now, and you can actually start fresh completely with the character. I think that's an interesting idea, but again, it's a gray area for me because I'm a fan of OG Sherlock. I have the complete works of Sherlock, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I love the movies. I love that BBC show with Benedict Cumberbatch. I love Sherlock Holmes. So again, I think it could be interesting to see what could happen with that character as younger generations now start learning who he is and what they can do with him. And then I also worry that they're going to totally fuck the whole thing up. And the pessimist in me tells me they're going to do exactly that.
Probably. And it may be both. It may be that somebody makes something great and somebody makes something terrible, and it's like the perverse Mickey Mouse thing we talked about. And they can, and they may, but I guess only time will tell.
Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about Sherlock Holmes, which is, he has been around forever. He seems kind of he seems public even before he was public, that everybody has known that story, and you don't really think about who owns the character when you see the show or you see the Robert Downey Jr. movies. It's not like a contentious property, I guess, that maybe it is for the people that are actually involved in that, but at least publicly we don't really notice or pay attention to it. That's different than other properties like Marvel or DC, where as soon as Marvel specifically, it was a very convoluted mess for a really long time of all of these characters, everybody knows them being together. Spider-Man and Thor and Iron Man and all these people. But when you want to make the movies, you can't put them all together because we don't own all of those characters. And so there was a long time where that was a big problem. And that's confusing, I think, for a lot of people.
It's still a thing. A lot of people have been wondering why the X-Men haven't shown up in the MCU yet. Now, I'm also one of those nerds. It's like, I don't care about Eternals. I don't care about,
Yeah.
some of these other characters and movies that you're releasing, and especially the shows. I want to
Yeah.
see the X-Men show up in the
Mhm.
MCU. I want to see the Fantastic Four show up in the MCU. I want like
Yeah.
these groups. These are the
Yeah.
groups that help that form the core of this group of the Avengers.
Yeah. And it would be nice to do it when the MCU and Avengers are still a good
good
unit,
thing, right?
and they haven't completely fallen apart into whatever.
But what's funny is 20th Century Fox and Sony. Well, Sony still owns Spider-Man rights, so everyone's like, everything's Spider-Man. Which hell yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason Spider-Man doesn't just show up all the time, the reason why there's always a weird limbo with Spider-Man is because Marvel and Sony are constantly trying to negotiate how to use the character because Sony owns the majority of the rights.
Right.
X-Men.
They're like, if you use them more, we need a bigger cut. And all
right.
That stuff.
And Disney's like, well, we don't want to pay that much, but now we kind of have to because he's like the most in-demand character that the MCU has right now.
Right. And so it's a way for Marvel and Disney to benefit from Spider-Man without owning Spider-Man, as they just make a deal with the actual owners, and they're like, hey, can we use this thing? We'll give you several
here's your
million
percentage,
dollars.
or here's I don't. It's a lot of jargon. I'm not going to bother following. But then with X-Men and Fantastic Four, 20th Century Fox still owns the rights on those characters, and they have been pretty blatant about like, you're not going to use. You're not using the characters. It's a miracle. I mean, a lot of people are excited for Deadpool to be showing up in the MCU, myself included, because I think he will bring much needed finger pointing, and it'll just be fun for like comic book reference. If you're excited for him to have a full like story arc in the MCU, maybe don't get your hopes up too high. He's a hard R character. MCU is a very like cloudy PG-13. So
and even in the comics, it's difficult to get him to fit in with the actual story they're trying to tell with the main group.
Typically treated as like a fun cameo that sticks around just a little too long before going away. But in
Deadpool 3, they are bringing Wolverine.
Yeah, he's going to be in Wolverine is with Deadpool, which is huge. And everyone's like, it's the big intro into the MCU for all of them. And I'm kind of on the side of like, not really. Like it is, but it's not going to be in the way that everyone, I think, thinks it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's basically, this is a fan film. They're going to cater to the MCU fan base that wants to see these characters, so they'll have cameos from a few things. Maybe a couple connections. Deadpool will, since he's able to break the fourth wall, that's how he's going to be in the MCU. Wolverine, though, is dead, and we still don't know how they're going to, like, what timeline this Wolverine will be. But this is not Wolverine's intro into the MCU. Hugh Jackman is not the MCU Wolverine. The dude is just too old to sign on to a 20-year contract to play this jacked character.
Right.
He's not a comic book figure. Hugh Jackman is a real man. He's like in his mid-50s.
He's too busy crushing the Tonys in Broadway anyway.
So I'm always laughing because there's a lot of times getting in conversations with people about these characters where I'm like, there's so many things that are going against what your hopes are, and you're not realizing there's a lot of like, well, that's far enough going on behind the scenes. So but
it is confusing, I think, for fans who especially for a known property like that,
Yeah.
like Marvel, where you know Spider-Man and Deadpool and the X-Men and all of these characters work together more or less. And then they start making movies about these characters. You're like, this is great. And then you're like, well, wow, it's really been a long time. I haven't seen a Spider-Man movie come out. I don't understand. And then you find out you can't have a Spider-Man movie. And at least until these two titans actually figure out what they're doing
Right.
and who's making what money and negotiate this whole problem.
So when they
And
did
that's
No Way Home, huge fan service film. I love that movie so much. It means so much to me. I think it's just a good movie too, but it's also fan service, like to the best ever. But the legalities of creating No Way Home was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because Sony owns obviously all of them, but Tobey Maguire was the original. They're definitely going to want to hold on to that property. They fired,
which is separate from the comic book Spider-Man,
right,
and separate from the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Right. And Andrew Garfield was fired by Sony. And so not only did they have to like
patch up
the
things.
rights to his version of Spider-Man, but they also had to go through all the other stuff of like a technical rehire, but he had to be hired by both Sony and by Disney and Marvel, and legal nightmares all over. Then they still had to negotiate the Tom Holland Spider-Man on top of the other two previous versions. And then they have to negotiate the use of all the villains and name drops and cameos of film or of prop things, you know, like every little detail that was a fan service had a copyright issue to it. Which I can only imagine.
I could never ever be involved in any of that.
Right. It almost gives a lot of credence to the argument of maybe don't focus on making adapted works.
Yeah.
Maybe the best route to go might just be original content. Which is an interesting thought.
It is an interesting thought, but I'm glad you went this way because I was trying to figure out how we would get back here. But this is exactly where I wanted to go. I'm going to try to blow your mind with the concept that I kind of thought of, because I agree with you. I do think original properties are great and important, and I want Hollywood and everybody to put more effort and money into supporting those people to make them. But is there such a thing as an original property? This is kind of like a philosophical idea. Is there such a concept as an original thought? Can that even exist? Or are all of your thoughts influenced by the world around you, the things you've seen before? If you're going to write a book or write a movie, you're going to be influenced by Star Wars and Game of Thrones and all of these things that you've seen before. And there are things that you especially like that you may want to pay homage to as references or general story structure or what have you. Paying homage to something can be seen as ripping it off also. It's a fine line, kind of. Like if you have Tarantino does this a lot, where he pays homage to like kind of older Hollywood and all of these things, generally like less known, more grindhousey things. But going back to the Sergio Leone thing I said beginning of this episode, when he made Fistful of Dollars, it was kind of an homage to this old Japanese film. And it bit him in the ass that it was kind of exactly like that, at least close enough that the court said you owe them a bunch of money and a percentage of your profits. So obviously filmmakers they're influenced by other storytellers. other books, other plays, other movies, and all this stuff. But is there a line where an homage is unacceptable or infringing upon something, or is it that's just the way the world works, that you are always influenced by all these things?
Homages are they're interesting to me because the general audience is not going to realize your homage is that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not going to, unless you are, and I'm just the general, because there's those like super deep cut fans that are going to pinpoint every little, homage, little tribute, little hint, they're going to pick up on all of it immediately.
I think you'd need to make it pretty obvious for like the general audience.
You would have to basically come out and just blatantly say, we pay homage to this movie in this way, keep an eye out for it.
Or have it be something that everybody knows.
Or have it be something that everyone knows.
The main character loses his hand and the villain says, I am your father. And he goes, no!
I mean,
everybody's like, oh, I get that.
Maybe don't do the exact same thing. Typically, the homage is going to be like your main character loses his hand and has to hold on to something with his good arm while like screaming. Maybe omit, I am your father.
Okay. Well, thank you for not letting me get sued when I write my screenplay.
But I think homages are definitely a fine line because especially for filmmakers, when they want to pay that homage to their heroes, it's typically, I want to copy that camera angle. I want to copy that sequence, or
I liked that. It made me feel a certain way. It got me into filmmaking.
Yeah. So I'm putting that exact thing in this movie. And recreating, because this was also something that I thought was crazy. Even the shots in a movie can be copyrighted and typically are.
Mm-hmm.
So when you pay homage and you're recreating a shot, recreating like a scene setup, you're technically infringing on the copyright.
Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff, the blocking and camera movements and scene choreography and all that stuff, it's kind of a dance that it's like stealing another person's dance as like a ballerina or something. Which is crazy, but true.
But I like homages. When I watch a movie and I happen to catch one, or I learn about it later, I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's like, oh, that's a cool little thing that they just did. Steven Spielberg does it in The Fabelmans, by the way. He does it a couple times. His is interesting because he pays homage to his body of work.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was going to ask.
He's like, but his body of work is through different production companies because they're not all Amblin. They're not all DreamWorks. He does not own Universal. He just happens to work for Universal a good amount of time. So even for him to pay homage to his own bodies of work, he still had to go through all the copyright channels to even do what he wanted to do in The Fabelmans. And that's also one of those silly things where you're like, he had to get permission to recreate his own block, his own, like, really?
Which is, it's a weird thing. Like, I kind of feel like maybe it would be nice if the owner owned it forever. And it wasn't like a property that you could sell to somebody else and then they can take it and they can make it, but nobody else can do it.
So kind of treat it like a rental.
Like a rental, or like an inventor. Like, I have invented this thing. I'm not necessarily saying like patents, because patents are just as weird and messy and gross. but like I have invented this and created it, and then when I die, that's like the end of it kind of thing or something. But it is a very weird thing that I did this, I created it, I invented it in my mind, I came up with it, and I executed it and made it very successful. And now I'm not allowed to reference it or do it again because I don't own it anymore.
I'm allowed to as long as I get the proper permission to do it, and I have to apply for the permission to do so. Yeah, it's a little goofy. But homages, I mean, if you catch them, they're fun. I usually take a lot of homages to be kind of the inside joke, if you will, of Hollywood, of like the small that clique of filmmakers. They're all definitely going to catch it. Everyone else, probably not. Some might.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. Even if I don't get it, I like that they do it.
Yeah,
and I like that they're allowed to do it or should be allowed to do it, because I really like. It's the filmmaker sharing their passion and their love of that thing, and even if they're doing it in kind of a hidden way, it's their way to express that, oh, I love this thing by this other person, or I love this movie I saw, or whatever, something that evoked emotion in me. I want to do it justice by letting it evoke emotion in you, because you may have never even seen that thing or whatever. And so it's a way to like let it live on a little bit more. Yeah, it's kind of an honoring it in a way.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. And I think that's a positive thing.
Unfortunately, it can get you in some trouble if the wrong person on the wrong day sees it.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, you brought it up a little bit. To answer your original question before I lose track.
Okay.
I think there can be original ideas, but it is weird because there's so many stories, there's so many things to influence our perception about absolutely everything out there. So whatever you sit down to create, obviously it'll have influence, but I think influence can stay just that. You can still have an original idea, original thought, even though it's being influenced, but you can still have your own take on it. You know, you still do your own thing. As long as you're not just blatantly copying, I guess, if you would. But anymore, the amount of stories and content that's out there, books, movies, music, essentially everyone is kind of making the same story, just all a little bit tweaked. We've gone into like the permanent realm of you can copy my work, but change it up a little bit, change some of the words so it's not the exact same.
It's like that meme. You can just change the homework a little bit so it's not so obvious. Yeah.
But I think original content is still it's still something to achieve. It still can be done. I think it'll always be able to be done as long as people can separate the influence, where you can let something kind of inspire you to do something, but you have to be able to leave it at that. You can't just go and recreate. You have to just create.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, but I think it's so odd that going back to one of the first things I mentioned, which is it's based on the concept that two people cannot have the same idea independently, which I don't think is true. I think that two people invent things that are identical or very similar all the time. And so for you to try really hard to make this original work and not copyright infringe anybody, And then to have someone call you up and say, hey, guess what? We're going to court. I wrote this exact story in
right.
1956. And you're like, oh, shoot. That's really awkward and weird.
That comes down to probability. There's how many billions of humans walking around at any given moment. Chances are...
More and more all the time,
right.
too.
Chances are you're going to have the same ideas as someone else. Chances are, like the scenario you just said, some people might be like, no. No, the probability would actually come out to be like, yeah, you're going to share experiences, you're going to share ideas, all this yada yada with at least one other person at the same time.
And so it comes down to what are the added probabilities of, have they seen the thing that you did? Yeah. Did they write down and date the day?
Right. Did they write it down? Did they date it? Did they actually pursue it? Or is that where the break-off is who pursued the idea and who did not?
Yeah. Was it just an idea they had? Or there's a million different variables, but sometimes all those could align.
I'm sure everyone can relate to those moments where we see some stupid thing come out that's like a huge hit, and you look at your friends or people around you look at you and they go, I fucking had that idea X number of years ago. Like,
someone just never pursued it or knew how to make it come out. And
right. Thing. Emojis. I had people very close to me in like mid 2000s, 2004 to like 2007. All their conversations were like the old school faces and little characters that you had to make on the buttons you had to click 4 times just to get one thing.
Yeah.
And then you jump ahead not even 5 years after that, and communication strictly through emojis is like a thing.
Yeah.
Our old group of friends used to communicate on either just the emoji or we went straight for the meme and GIFs. So
it's true. Well, it's a tale as old as time. It's the hieroglyphics. All humans have always communicated through images.
I think everyone still wishes, like, if only I could invent something like bottled water.
Right. Those obvious ideas.
Actually, personally, I go more the route of, like, I wish I could be the guy that had the idea for, like, pet rock. Because as stupid as that is, it took off. Like, it was a thing.
I can't imagine thinking of something so dumb and thinking that human beings would be so dumb that they would love it and buy it to even begin to come up with that
I know.
idea.
I think the big thing, obviously we can't have an episode about copyright and intellectual properties and all that without talking about like content's biggest, one of the biggest enemies, if you will, piracy.
Yes. I was going to get an eye patch, and I did not do that. But piracy is a real problem, I say, as I am myself a pirate.
As you started the whole thing off with.
Yeah. For legal reasons, that's a joke. Wink. Yeah, what do you want to know about piracy?
I don't. So, well, we can't talk about copyright stuff or the intellectual property without bringing up this subject because it's such a big part of the subject, especially in the digital age. It started off, we kind of hinted throughout this whole episode, actually, kind of connecting the pieces to it. Piracy really kind of came about back in the days where we would record a song off the radio.
When you would have a ship and you'd be crossing the Atlantic and you had a bunch of spices and then these dudes would show up.
And your ship was actually not this giant vessel the historical ship was actually very small, kind of dinghy shaped.
Yeah.
Your life
But
was
these
not grand.
assholes would show up and stab you in the stomach and then steal all your spices. Yeah. No, I'm talking about old school piracy.
Yeah.
But no, modern piracy, yes, that is a real problem. Well, some people think it's a real problem. People that own studios and own all of these properties think it's a real problem.
Yes.
To that people will not purchase a DVD or not purchase a ticket to a approved movie theater. Piracy is not just like stealing a movie on the internet, really. It's also like seeing it at an unapproved movie theater or seeing it at a friend's party in the backyard where they invite the whole neighborhood or whatever.
Right.
Because the studio hates that because they don't get their cut. They have a relationship with the movie theaters and they say, we get a certain X amount of your profits. You're allowed to show our movies because we are going to give them to you, and you're allowed to show them to people and charge money as long as we get some of that money, a lot of that money.
Like the vast majority.
Yeah. Well, most of that money. And then you get to also sell popcorn and make a little money.
And that's where your profit actually comes from. Yeah, folks, when you complain about ticket prices, that's not the theater being responsible for that.
Yeah. All the theater movie owners who are giving them to the theaters is a real problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's even more of a problem nowadays, piracy is, because not only is the internet digital and anybody can stream anything or put any file out there and give someone a link and they can download it 1,000 times. That happens all the time. But it used to be when things were more physical and analog, they would send reels of film to the movie theater to play. And if you wanted to make a copy of a movie in the theater, you had to sneak in a little camcorder in your coat and make sure, hope that nobody saw you. Otherwise you'd get in big trouble. Right. And record the screen. People do still do that. You can find camcorder videos of movie theaters all the time if you wanted to, but you probably shouldn't do that. People do still do that because it's the easiest way to get a film filmed.
Well, it's easier to accomplish now too, because cell phones have like deliberately been engineered to be like, I mean, it's all the advertisements is look at the camera, look at how it films. It films in the dark now. Like,
yeah, it's the best at recording sound. It's the best at recording loud noises around you. It's the best at weeding out distracting sounds of your neighbors. Everybody has a high quality camera in their pocket at all times.
Right.
So like I said, the technology has just made it impossible. It was already impossible at the very beginning of the internet. Now it's 10 times more impossible.
It's 1,000 times more impossible. I think it's
but also the movies that are given to the theaters are now in digital format. And so if you can get a hold of that, you can get a very high quality image, not just the shitty camcordered ones. Same for like when award season comes around, people send those screener Blu-rays and DVDs out to everybody in the Academy, which is like a ton of people. Those always end up online. Like you can always get the screener version of brand new movies that are still in theaters that are just, and there's always like, they try to put like a text on the screen of like, this belonged to so-and-so. And so if it gets out on the internet, but then someone will just slap a blurry filter on that. And occasionally you'll get a little blur on your screen, but it's fine. Don't worry about it.
When I worked at the video rental store way back in the day, we would be given screeners for movies coming out on VHS and DVD. Later on, like that year, we would get screeners, and you'd put the disc in, and the movie would play just fine. And then there's always like a random part where either the word like screener would go across or property of so and so and scroll across, or the picture would like change size for a time and then it would go back to normal. And the whole idea was like, we'll purposely fuck up this print just so
Yeah.
that people won't want to copy it. Like it made it impossible for people to copy it. It was
Yeah.
like breaking the tab off of the VHS.
Yeah. Is like, which I think that there is an element to that where if you make every possible copy shitty enough, and the good version is not that difficult to attain or expensive or whatever, then people will just buy that thing. Like I would rather pay $10 for one that doesn't get interrupted by ads or interrupted by text or change all the time if I like it. If I don't know if I like it and I want to try it out, I'll try it out for free probably.
Yeah. I think all the streaming platforms to me seem kind of like the funny way of acceptance of piracy, but still profiting off of it.
In what way do you
mean? Netflix, since they're the top dog, Netflix is pure streaming. Obviously, for all the movies they have to like have contracts for all of these films. In fact, they do. They have contracts for every title that's on their platform, every title coming out, and when those titles are leaving. A lot of people will blame Netflix solely for, you took this off, and it's like, no, the contract actually ended. Like,
I can't believe you don't have Friends on there anymore. Well, it's not really their fault.
Well, that's because the contract ended and because HBO made a deal with NBC Studios and became kind of a partner, not the owner, but a partner in it. Anyways.
And they also started their own streaming service and wanted their content back.
So it cracks me up, though, because to me, all the stream services have become, or were, I guess, a way of legally pirating all of these movies, like the digital versions of you can go on and just stream it.
Yeah. It's like, you're calling it pirating. I'm thinking of it more of like renting it.
So I'm loosely using the term. And the only reason I'm saying piracy now is because of all the supposed crackdown on password sharing.
Yeah, I don't know how Netflix is going to do that, but they are very concerned that someone can subscribe and pay money to their service, but then give their password to somebody else, and that person can also stream from their account. And so they feel like they lose money. Both people should have bought a subscription. There's no guarantee that they would, but they feel like they lost money because they didn't. And so somehow they're trying really hard to crack down and say no more password sharing. I don't know how they're going to do that, if that's even possible. But that is, I think, in their mind, piracy that they are stealing.
That's why I had to bring up the stream services because of this crackdown on password sharing, because to me it's so ridiculous. Like, the movie's already online. The fact that it's on a digital stream service, that movie is already available everywhere.
Right. And also, this is coming from Netflix, a company that was created by mailing DVDs to your house, and everybody who received those DVDs then gave it to their parents, gave it to their neighbors, and we all borrowed it and then gave it back and sent it back, because they were like, you can have it as long as you want. You subscribe for a monthly fee, and you can, whenever you're done with it, just send it back. And so you could have it for weeks and weeks, and everybody could watch that movie.
You could have it for like a year. And Netflix would probably send you a letter or an email being like, have you watched it?
You're paying $10 a month for this one movie. That's kind of weird. Like for 5 months in a row. But also, even if people weren't doing that, handing it out to their friends, other people make DVD burners, like you were saying. So it is extremely simple to buy a DVD, rent a DVD from Netflix, just find one wherever, then take it home, burn a copy of it. Now you have a copy forever, send it back. Now I'm slowly building my library as if I'm just recording it off of TV or the radio or whatever. It's the same
It's
thing.
the same thing. It's just the digital
And it will always
version.
be the same thing. Like that's never going to go away. As long as there is content, there's going to be somebody who copies it. Even if we went back to like books,
Yep.
well, I mean, we have books now, but like if we went back to just books, like there was only books as media, people would still be copying those books, or even just telling their friends all about their books.
Well, I feel like it's been, I swear I've seen a movie where they romanticize the idea of someone fell in love. Like it was a period piece too, where someone fell in love with a book and copied it down so that they could give that copy, like to pass it along, but they got to hold on to that original because obtaining books way back in the day was not exactly a normal thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of an upper class thing. Like it was.
Yeah. Very difficult to find and very expensive to get.
Yeah. I mean, the binding was like genuine leather. Everything had to be hand sewn together, glued.
Yeah. And if it's before the printing press, it was all handwritten.
Yeah. And even after the print, they only printed, 100 tops copies of one piece of literature. So for it to spread, people had to go and start making their own copies to spread these stories. So yeah, I think it's kind of funny watching these forms of media piracy throughout time.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of a great book that everybody should probably read, especially as we go into the apocalypse here soon in a minute, called Fahrenheit 451.
Yep.
Which is all about books have been banned. And so these people are trying to keep these books and stories alive by memorizing them. And then that becomes like kind of their identity, where I am now Pride and Prejudice, and I have memorized Pride and Prejudice. I can recite Pride and Prejudice, and I am going to tell that story to everybody that will listen. That's granted in an apocalyptic era where there's no actual publisher who's going to come and sue you. But if they did, I'm sure they would, because that's just what they do. But that's the thing, is that media is for consumption. After I consume it, like I can't get it out of me anymore. Like it's always in me, and I can share it with somebody else, whether I tell them about it or actually hand them the DVD. It's not terribly different.
Right.
So it's kind of weird.
Media piracy is so odd to me anymore, because it definitely reminds me, just like when we were burning CDs, burning DVDs, copying movies from TV, recording them off of TV. We get told, you're not allowed to do any of this. It's all bad. But then the same people that are telling you no are like, here's all the tools you need to do it. And we want you to have and use all these tools. Yeah. But don't do it.
Yeah. It's just temptation at that point.
You're like, I'm kind of getting some mixed signals here, guys. You need to pick one. I kind of view it like, I think you touched on this not that long ago. For me, like with music, I remember listening, and you still do. You go online, you can listen to a song, you can listen to an album for free online.
I could find a song 1,000 different ways right now.
Right. And then if I like it, I can even download a song without purchasing anything. If I like it, I can go and buy the physical copy, or I can buy a digital copy, which doesn't quite make all that much sense to me, considering they're like, you have the free digital that's the exact same quality, everything's the exact same. It's just on a streaming version.
Right.
Or you can own the digital copy And you're like, do I have limitations on when I'm allowed to listen? No. Well,
until they stop carrying it. I know that happened with iTunes for a few big things where people bought something. They bought an album, and then for some reason the album, like iTunes couldn't have it anymore, and so they removed everybody's purchased music as well. So they didn't actually own it. They thought that they did, but they didn't.
oh,
And
that's super.
or
strange.
if iTunes or Spotify or whatever just went down the drain and just went bankrupt, then you couldn't stream your stuff. So having the actual file would be better.
I mean, I'm more of a physical copy guy anyway, so that's kind of okay with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think everybody from our generation remembers the anti-piracy ads before your VHS or Blu-ray. You wouldn't download a car.
Dude, I was just watching. Well, I can't say yet because it's for a future episode. I was watching a movie. I have like the old DVD of it, and I popped the DVD in. I went into the kitchen to start making myself some food, and I heard that fucking ad come on with that music.
I can picture the guitar. Music in my mind.
Every time I see it, I laugh because I'm like, they go through extreme crimes with this ad, and then they're like, "You wouldn't
steal a car, you wouldn't molest a baby." No, but I would watch this VHS that my friend gave me that they recorded yesterday.
If I asked to borrow this movie from a friend, chances are you
wouldn't murder
a
nun, would you? No, I would not. But you wouldn't steal a car thing is kind of funny because, like with 3D printing and stuff, you can make almost anything. So you literally could have the plans to a car, make your own car, and not buy it. I mean, that's where we're headed. It's like a minute away. It's wild.
It's such a weird time.
Yeah, and I think getting more and more pointless, which I think is generally good for the openness of the internet and openness of society. But I think culturally, even not legally, I think legally is very messy and very weird and people abuse it and all that stuff. Personally, I think culturally it's better to support the owners and creators of this thing. If somebody is making something and somebody else is ripping it off, say everybody just be like, hey, no, this is actually this person's thing and they worked really hard on it and we should support them. I love that kind of thing. I think that it is generally better and less likely to be abused overall.
Yeah, I'm on that same page with you. I'm very much in favor with protecting the original creator. I think that's important. I think I think there's just so much muddled gray area with all of this and every aspect of every piece of content that's created always starts off so, I guess, basic, and then it's just like it's too many hands in the cookie jar.
Right.
Everyone's trying to get a piece out of something, and I think that just has I think it detracts from the important aspects of the content. There were times, dude, I found one website where all it was a list of lawsuits. That's the whole site. The whole fucking thing was just, this lawsuit happened this time, this lawsuit happened this time. And you know how they were all ended? Like, this is still, I forget all the specific jargon, but none of them were resolved.
Okay. So they're like ongoing current lawsuits. Like, oh, jeez.
Why? And some of them were dating back to like 1998. And it's like,
oh, jeez.
Let it go.
Yeah. At some point, you're spending way more money and time. And I mean, these people's efforts could be put to much better use, I'm sure.
Way better use. Like, come on. Oh, man.
All right. Well, there you
what
have
else
it.
You got, man?
Those are our thoughts on. I think that's it. I think that's great. A way to end it. That's just our thoughts on the old piracy and intellectual property and copyright infringement.
Mhm.
It sounded like it would be boring, but I thought it was pretty interesting, and so I hope that you did
I
too.
think it was definitely a decent discussion. It reminded me of like our Rotten Tomatoes discussion, and then
I was going to say the same thing, because I think that people ask themselves or ask each other, like, what is the deal with Rotten Tomatoes, or what's the deal with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey? How is that even possible? Why can they do that? And so there's your answer.
Now, even though I have no desire to see it, and I don't think it should be made, just for my own personal feelings towards those characters, I have no issue with anyone else going and watching it. I know you are probably going to go watch it. You're probably going to laugh during it because it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of the great thing of these movies is like, I don't have to go watch it.
Yeah. What if not everything revolved around me and people were to enjoy things that I don't enjoy? That would be a wild time.
Crazy. Unless it comes down to people enjoying those, the majority of the movies you and I suffered through.
Oh, the most offensive movies of all time.
Now, if you enjoy some of those, I strongly suggest you reevaluate your life.
Seek help. Yes. Definitely seek some help because you've got some issues.
Wow. Yeah, I'm still like, I got asked today, like, what are the worst movies ever? And I forget what one they brought up, but they brought up a movie that like I'm notoriously vocal about not being a fan of, and I had to laugh because I'm like, I honestly don't even know how to say like. I no longer have a go-to, guys, because the actual go-to no one else has heard of or watched.
I was going to say you definitely do have a go-to. It's just that when you say the worst movie ever made is a Serbian film, everybody's like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
And I'm not gonna like sit and explain this movie to them because no. But it is weird being in a position now where I'm like, my go-to is no longer open water. This is a whole new era.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of like growing, but in a more uncomfortable way.
But I think that does it, folks. Let us know. I know we didn't get like too detailed. This really just kind of turned into a full discussion. Let us know your thoughts on intellectual property. How you feel about Steamboat Willie becoming public domain next year in 2024. Are you going to see Winnie the Pooh? Blood and Honey?
Blood and Honey.
Go get yourself some cool swag. The coffee mug is pretty awesome, I'm not going to lie.
I like it.
Yeah. It finally fucking showed up. God.
Oh, yeah, to take a while.
Yeah, this one took a little bit, but
okay.
I like it.
Nice.
What else do we got? Oh!
I think, what?
Well, I feel like, I know it's in our description, but thank you, Alan, Travis from Attack on Venus. If you haven't listened to them, go check them out. I know we've got them tagged in our credits and all that, but thank you guys for the music. You are
our
badass.
Theme music, and you'll hear the outro in a minute. It's great. I've been listening to it. It's like so catchy.
It's so cool.
Everything a theme song should do, which is be catchy.
I know you and I have talked about it a few times, and when Alan sent it to me a while back, first thoughts to me was like, oh my god, this is like those 90s superhero cartoons that I grew up watching. Like, it totally put me back into like Saturday morning cartoon mode. I love it. It's so good.
Good. Yeah, I agree. It's great. We appreciate it a lot, guys. Thanks a lot.
So thank you guys, and for everyone else, go check them out. They're based out of hometown back home in Colorado, so go check them out. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Attack on Venus. They're cool guys.
And
all right.
That's it.
Well, that'll do it.
All right.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.